Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Campus Safety Voices podcast. My name is Amy Rock, and I am Campus Safety Senior Editor. And today's episode, we will be covering the importance of having an integrated video and access control system. After a violent incident at a school, investigators often determine that some sort of security technology or lacking policies prove somewhat or completely ineffective in preventing or mitigating that incident. This often leads schools and colleges rushing to implement updated technologies, and sometimes those systems are disparate and don't seamlessly integrate with other technologies. For this interview, I spoke with Jason Friedberg, who is commercial lead for education at Genetec, and we talked about how unified security systems both increase safety and also save campuses money. We also spoke about what campuses should be looking for in a unified system to help them reduce total cost of ownership while improving overall effectiveness, minimal standards security and public safety departments should expect from physical and electronic security systems, standards customers are finding the most challenging to comply with, and other concerns and challenges customers have voiced regarding campus security and technology. Here's our chat. Be sure to subscribe to Campus Safety's YouTube channel and like or leave a comment on our videos, or subscribe to our Campus Safety Voices podcast on Apple and Spotify and leave a review. Over the past decade or so, there have been so many compliance requirements put in place for schools when it comes to different security systems like video surveillance, access control, and emergency notification. And I feel like it's often largely influenced by major school incidents, but in turn, it has caused a lot of schools to implement disparate systems that don't talk to each other, rushing to get them installed by a certain deadline or whatnot. And so I guess, can we just start with an overview of the basic standards both K through 12 and colleges and universities should be looking for to help them reduce, total cost of ownership and overall effectiveness of these systems?
Sure, and that's a great starting point because we talk about the foundation, where every school should be, and it's ubiquitous. It's K-12 and it's higher education. It's the public institutions, the private institutions, the tech schools. I mean, you name it. The baseline too are really video and access control. And if we look at those and sort of the physical security standards of concentric circles, we're going to start with that sanctum sanctorum, right? The doors of the school or the doors of the building in your campuses as the start. And electronic access control is really the key for that, no pun intended. When I started, even my last campus in 2006 was still on brass keys. They had a brass key system that was 40 years old. They had grandmasters that were unaccounted for, and we were heading into a very litigious stage, right? We had a number of high-profile lawsuits from deaths and sexual assaults that occurred, in residence halls for college campuses, and also break-ins and things that were happening in schools with defacing and the theft of a lot of damaging and theft of a lot of equipment. And we couldn't figure out how they were getting in or when they were getting in. Did they pry the door open? Did they have a master key? And access control immediately sets a baseline and negates all of those hard access control issues that were around with physical security and brass keys. Basically, what it did was it secured your perimeter, and it had an ability for us to know when a door was open or closed, whether or not someone was using a brass override key, like a lot of maintenance departments still had, or if they were actually using, electronic access, whether it was a card or a fob. Nowadays, we're using our phones and our watches, which is great. I have one of the access control apps installed on my watch. It's super nice when I go to work. I think that's the baseline for where we are. And if you look at these school shootings and other attacks that are happening, they all come with access that wasn't granted or permitted by someone on purpose. They got into that building. You start with, I won't go into each and individual one, but you start with all of them. And if you look back at the history, they were all based on having access when they shouldn't have had access to do those things. And so that's the number one, right? We have to get away from brass keys. I know a couple of schools and a couple of locations that still have them, and move to those access control, electronic access control. If we go out from there, we look at video, right? The video is another important layer. The video is an important layer because it now lets us look outside of that building. It lets us look at the parking lots, the ways that people are coming and going in our K-12 schools, in our campuses, to get an idea of what's going on, for the life of that campus or the life of that school. And so we're now being able to see what's going on before they get to that door, before they hit the intercom and they want to come in the instance of a K-12 or, in a residence hall, whether they're trying to get their friend to come let them in or they forgot their ID. And so these video cameras allow us to now look at the surrounding areas. Can we see someone trying to break into a first floor window? Can we see someone in the parking lot that's shoveling around and putting something into a large bag, throwing it over their shoulder as they approach a school or as they approach a residence hall or an academic building? And so now we get some the ability to respond before an incident occurs. So I think those are two big ones. And then we start to marry those together and we could start to look at, those intercom systems. Are we getting a picture with the person so we can buzz them in? So we don't have to have a security guard at every building. We could start to reduce that total cost of ownership by having maybe 1 or 2 security guards on for the 20 residence halls on your campus that are managing the access control after hours for those locations. So that's
sorry to interrupt you for a second. That also leaves space for them to be interacting with students and doing other things that are just as important, like creating a culture between students and police. That is a positive one, and that takes a little bit off their plate.
100%. And it also allows us to not only decrease that cost of ownership, right, and what they do, but increase their ability to socialize and meet with those police officers, to put a human face to them, and really to lower that level of requirement down, so it doesn't have to be an armed police officer or even a dispatcher. It could literally be a security guard who comes and goes, and that's all they're responsible for, right? So it reduces the training, it reduces the requirement for a very expensive resource that we're not using in the way that they should be used. So that's a big piece when we look at that sort of overall cost. And I think those are the two things that are very important. And then if we look at what's the importance of these piece of these systems as we go forward and look at forensically, well, with disparate systems, we're saying, okay, we know someone broke into this building here, or they ripped the door open, or there was damage to an area. But we have a camera system, and now we're going to review that system, and we're going to have to go back and look at all the camera video. And then we look at the card access video, and we're trying to align the times up. And, inevitably they're off by a minute. So, you're searching, you spend half a day, looking for a 30-second clip. When you have these as a unified system, you now have the ability to say, okay, align all of my video cameras to this time at this location, align all of the access control also at that time at that location. So we're going to see these badge ins, we're going to see these access granteds or requests to leave, and we're lining them up with video, and we're done in 30 seconds. So it really helps to save the time and give us a forensic background that we can do better reporting on and better examination on for investigations.
Now, can you talk about the minimal standards that security and public safety departments should expect from these physical and electronic security systems, kind of broken down by different types of systems, like you were saying, access control and video in particular?
Sure. So, with access control and video, what we're seeing, if there's a unified system, and listen, we're unified, but even if it's not a unified system, right? Even if you have disparate systems, I think having a GUI, a graphical map interface, is really the minimal standard. And here's why. What we're seeing is we're not really seeing single school deployments anymore, right? We're seeing huge campuses with 80, 200 buildings on it, thousands of cameras. I just talked to a K-12 in South Carolina Monday. They have 8,000 cameras and 2,000 doors. They're trying to do a rebirth of what, their whole system and reimagine it and take into account, all of these requirements and mandates. They're not using a graphical user interface. So if they get someone new coming in as a new school resource officer, or even an IT person looking at that security system, they're looking at a list of maps or a list of cameras or a list of doors. They don't know where anything is. The key is to make it as quick quickly usable and adaptable as you can. So you put those doors and those cameras and your license plate readers and whatever else on a map, and all you got to do is go to the door and you see it on the map and you click on it. You could zoom in by floor and you could have your floor maps on there. And you could have your internal maps there. So it not only reduces the time to learn that system and the necessity to figure out where everything is, it also helps with response and reaction, because if something's occurring, that alarm is going to pop up right above that building, even right above that door, above that camera, and you're immediately able to drill down to that floor or to that door and look at the video, and you could video verify, okay, we see smoke in that room, or okay, we see that the door has been propped open with a brick, and we have to go have someone move that. So the ability to have these things on a map completely changes the way that we interface with these systems. And then the other piece is obviously not looking at the constant scroll of who's badging into doors all the time, but being able to get usable reports out of that, so we know when a door is having a problem and we're constantly sending officers out or maintenance out to fix those doors or look at them. Well, now we could say, okay, we realize we're having a REX issue, and we could start to look at these trends of the doors. And is it the age of the door? Is it the model of the hardware that's on there that is causing the problem? And we can get in front of these nuisance alarms before they become a resource drain. So I think those are two big things. That's the sort of baseline with the maps. And then, if you sort of extend out the requirements there, it's, what's your ability to lock down and notify your campus, whether it's K-12 or higher ed, right? Do you have a button? Now, it's not a mandate, but it's a mandate. Do you have a single button or a single switch to allow you to lock down a zone or an entire campus with a single press of a button? Do you have the ability to send out a notification? So under Clery in higher ed, it's a federal requirement. It's not a federal requirement in K-12 yet, but there's legislation out there to make that sort of mirror emergency notification requirement for K-12. And I think it's warranted, right? We're asking these kids from the time they go to school until they go into their corporate life to be prepared for fire, for active shooters, for all of these other things. But it's only in that one, higher ed 4 years where they're getting notification. And I think that's changing. So we're seeing schools implement these notifications through teachers. There's a number of companies out there that are doing this. OmniAlert and Rave are some of the ones that are big in this space. Those are great companies to look for when you talk about what this looks like for alerting. And I think that's the other piece. So the ability to lock down and the ability to alert your campus community as to what's going on are other foundational requirements for a good system.
Now, you're obviously speaking with customers all the time. Like you said, just 2 days ago, you were with a district in South Carolina. What standards are you finding customers are having the most challenges in complying with or meeting?
I wouldn't say, so there's a lot of, all right, so let me break this down two ways. So in compliance, this new NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, that doesn't allow the Hikvision and Dahua cameras. So many K-12 schools put these in over the years. They were dirt cheap. They worked absolutely fine for the job that they needed them to get done. So there's millions of them out there. The problem is they're not allowed to be on your system anymore if you have a federally funded school. All but, I think, 4 institutes of higher education, which are our military academies, are federally funded, the Title IV funded schools. There's not a school district that I've ever met, even private ones, that aren't taking federal funds somewhere along the way. So this NDAA, requirement for the prohibition of certain telecommunications and surveillance equipment on those on their campuses is a big compliance issue. We're starting to have these discussions out there with our clients, how to get it up, how to get it off, and those things. But that's the biggest compliance issue that I see. The non-regulatory compliance issues and the ones that sort of ease of use is just how do we move from disparate systems into a more unified or easier to use system. we're not necessarily having the secretary at the front desk doing it anymore, but we're still having school resource officers, and they're turning over with school resource officers. We want the principals and the school superintendents to be able to look at these systems. And so how do we get a system that's easily usable and digestible? How can we create a single lockdown button for the central staff to use it at K-12? How do we do the same for college campuses for their police departments or public safety departments? So I think, all of those are keys for what the compliance standards are and what they can and can't be doing on their campus.
We had mentioned this, but I'd imagine a lot of schools that have disparate systems, their police and or security staff end up being the ones who deal with any issues that come up. Or have you spoken to customers about how having a unified system has changed their day-to-day work and the effectiveness of the role, not having to deal with as many issues as it relates to security technology when you have a unified system?
Yeah, I think it's three parts with the unified system. It's the installation and management. They install a single system. It's written on the same code. When they go to do the updates, it updates the whole system. Nothing breaks. Those customizations that get them to work and talk together, on a standard PSIM, don't work when you update one side and not the other. So those things just work. The other piece is your training and your onboarding, right? If you're learning one system, the flow and the way that system operates and works generally the same across all of its products. They don't change much from product to product for that reason, right? It's all written on the same code. Everybody gets used to the same interface. It's standardized. It's easy to use. So going from your access control to your video, or even adding a license plate reader or reporting in or visitor management, it's all going to feel the same. So that training and onboarding is minimized as well. And then when you talk about that overall total cost of ownership, including the first two pieces, is that long-term maintenance and upkeep. Well, if you only have one system to maintain and upkeep, it's a lot easier to budget for that. You know what it's going to be every year. If you want to add on another, module, it's not going to be another service and maintenance agreement. You're going to have that single service and maintenance agreement for that total life of that system. So aggregating that all out, it helps to bring down and moderate that total cost of ownership for those three reasons.
And now I'm sure we could talk about this for a long time, but currently, or maybe ones that you're most excited about, what types of offerings does Genetec have to address the issues of not having a unified system?
So when we come in, one of the things that Genetec has done really a good job in the last 3 years is starting to bring in third-party video and third-party license plate readers. For a lot of years, Genetec did work with everybody in the video camera space, but we had a hard time working with our competitors. And over the last 3-4 years, what we started to do was say, okay, listen, we really need to be able to bring our competitors' video in. So we're talking to them and saying, hey, listen, we'll give you ours, you give us yours. It's about the overall safety and security of these schools, not just owning that piece and being able to protect it forever. And so I think that that's been very good. So when we go out and we talk to these schools and we say, hey, you have this camera or this door, we're going to be able to work with you. So the key that we talk about when we talk about a migration of a system away from one of our competitors to a Genetec is we can salvage 80% of the hardware you already have out there. Even your analog cameras, we don't necessarily want to bring them in, but we may have an encoder to be able to get that back and bring that in as well. So we're not hitting it hard right off the bat with a complete forklift upgrade, right? It's not a rip and replace of all your cameras and all your doors. If you have standard hardware like that Mercury hardware, Vertex, we're able to jump right in, we flash those boards and bring them right into that Genetec system. So it's a quicker transition over to a newer unified system, and it's one that's cost effective because we try to reuse as much as we can.
It makes me happy to hear companies working together. I mean, I feel like so much you don't see that, and you just see companies being bought up left and right, and then there's like a monopoly on so many things, and so it's kind of nice to hear.
Yeah.
sometimes.
Well, I think you know who the monopoly, the big monopoly man is out on the board. But I got to tell you, I was really surprised when one of our big competitors said, you know what, we really need to work with you. And Genetec stepped right up and said, yep, we want to reciprocate. We want to give that same sort of ability to you guys. So it is, even though we have these big players, they're all, fighting for things left and right. That underlying tone is safety is the key.
And we touched on this a little bit, but obviously not every campus is a one size fits all, and budgets come into play as well. How do you address that when working with various campuses looking for a unified platform?
So with the Genetec unified platform, we're kind of like the office suite, right? When we install the entire Genetec platform. We get video, access control, license plate readers, some failure communication, anything we have sort of gets installed. But you can open it up and scale as you need. So if, let's say, a school district has the money to do 5 schools this year, 5 schools next year, 5 schools the next year, what we could do is we'll come in, we'll allow you to open up those 5 schools, let's say just on access control. So you're going to open up the access control that first year, maybe halfway through the year, you get your other grant funding or your other funding comes in. You want to add the video on, we could turn on that video module and switch that video module over to Genetec as well. So we're allowing you to turn on those modules as you need, and then scale them up as you need as well. So it doesn't have to be all your school district at once. It doesn't have to be all your access control and all your video together. It can be little by little. It becomes a little bit more challenging to manage those 2 systems simultaneously, but there are also 2 systems that are either paid for or you're migrating away from, and 2, which is you're looking for that cost savings. So I think, that's important. And then you can add those things in, like, you want to add a license plate reader on, all you got to do is, even if you want to add 1 or 2 for the teacher's parking lot, or you have a VIP area, at your higher ed location that you want, or a new science research facility that you want to turn, you want to automate with license plate readers, you could add that on just at that location. And you don't have to pay for the rest of the school or the rest of the location. So again, I think when you're looking at these systems, especially unified systems, you want to turn one thing on, you could turn it on and you could scale as you need.
If you can't do it that way, where it's done little by little, schools don't really have a choice but to do it, over the summer or breaks, so you're kind of limited in your timeline when you can do it. So like you can start addressing the issue right away if you're able to do it little by little.
You're 100% correct. And it is funny. When we work these K-12s, they're like, okay, June 2nd, we're out of school. Can you start the project June 5th, that Monday? And then we have to have it done by this day because teachers come back, we start moving in. And if you can't, this is our drop dead date. This is what we have to have done. And that's what we're seeing. And kind of the same for higher ed. The higher ed's a little bit more fun because they try to squeeze things in over that winter break. They're like, okay, you have from December 30th until January 15th until the kid's back. And you got all the guys running in there and trying to, try to get this stuff installed and up and online at the same time. So yeah, you're working on these hard deadlines. There's a little to no room to maneuver, especially with these mission critical solutions. You can't not have access control online the day those students come back, no matter where you are. That has to be online, or else you're going to have a hard time defending if something goes wrong. And I think those are key. And the installers and the manufacturers, even with the ridiculous lead times that we're seeing right now, understand that. And we're being very clear. We get every week, Genetec gets a list. What does our pipeline look like? What are the lead times on all of those devices that we need, whether we make it or, we're working with those people.
And now to kind of give ourselves a plug, but obviously we're interested in hearing about what our readers, want and need. But
Sure.
You were at some of our campus safety conferences,
Sure.
might be related to unified systems or something different, but were there any themes that you were hearing from attendees about, what they need for their campus as it relates to security and technology? And you can also say, what are some ways Genetec's product offerings address these topics as well?
Sure. As a matter of fact, it's that South Carolina school district. We saw them at East. So that was huge for us. We've been trying to talk to them for a while. I think they finally got it. So that was nice. Okay. So The one thing that I think we're seeing is the addition, if they already have a good access control system, no matter who it is, if they already have a good video system, we're starting to look at internal sensors, IoT sensors like Halo, which do gunshot and vape detection and bullying detection, smoke detection, all of those things in one shot. How do we maximize a single unit that can do multiple things for bathrooms, really highly used in bathrooms? The other piece is license plate readers. So we talked in the beginning sort of about these concentric circles and pushing out the security as far as we can to have the most time to react and respond. And we start to look at what do license plate readers look like. If you have a school that has, a fence around it, already has good sight lines for video, well, the only way they're getting in is, through those access points for vehicles. They could be walking, but they're driving. And if 85% of the violent crime is committed in a tandem with a vehicle, well, then that's a huge statistic when we talk about getting a license plate reader on there. And so license plate readers we're seeing at K-12. We've already seen them a lot in higher ed, but we're seeing them more because of the gig economy. You have ride shares coming back and forth. You have food deliveries that we never had before, right? You were stuck with go to the cafeteria, whatever you can get out of the vending machine. So we're now having a lot of accidental crimes or accidents, or the exposure to a lot of outside people on our college campuses that we didn't have before. With our K-12s, what we're doing is we're looking at who's coming into that K-12. Is it a PNG, a persona non grata? Is it an estranged parent, a student that's been expelled? Do we want to know if a student who's got, a red flag, I probably shouldn't use that term, a student that has issues and isn't supposed to be on campus anymore, did they just drive onto campus? Or we can go, rather than going individualized or personalized, did we have a vehicle coming in the wrong way? Are we being notified of that? It's going wrong way to one way. Or is that vehicle traveling at a high rate of speed when it passes that LPR camera? Why would you be coming into a school zone at 60 miles an hour, the wrong way, or even the right way, but 60 miles an hour? So those things could trigger alerts that get our attention to say, there's something going on here. It might not be nefarious, but there's a possibility that there's something going on here, and we can look at how to deal with that ahead of time. So I think license plate readers are helping us move those concentric circles out into an area where we can respond and react before the problems happen inside our schools.
I wasn't even thinking colleges must hate like Ubers and everything like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, when I was in college, it wasn't a thing, and just so many more people on campus and Uber Eats and all these deliveries and things like that. And
so we were trying for a while. I know, working with IACLEA, a lot of these big schools are like the airports. You have to pick up and drop off at a certain location. So they're actually using the license plate reader. So if they see some guy just saying, I'm not going to stop there, they're getting that plate and they're notifying Uber, hey, listen, XYZ123 doesn't want to comply. They're no longer allowed on our campus. And as soon as they come on the campus, they get a red alert, and the public safety department can deal with that. Uber Eats, they're going into our buildings. They're going into residence halls. People are letting them in because they have a residence hall thing on their bags. That's a huge issue that we never really had to deal with it before. And so that's another issue that the video and the access control and the license plate readers are helping to weave a better story on time and allowing us to look at these things forensically to put the pieces together when something happens.